Hello, this is the first video that I'm recording for this YouTube channel. I don't know what I'm gonna call it yet, but yeah, I'm just sort of, getting the reviews out, sort of feeling this sort of thing out. So, you know. So basically, the whole conceit behind this channel is that I've decided to try and watch a movie a week for the next year. So basically, just around the middle of April, sort of deal, 2027 would be sort of where I guess after 52 reviews, so I don't actually have to put that much thought into it. But yeah, basically, I'm gonna be watching movies, I'm gonna be doing vlogs about them, gonna be doing reviews. Just to sort of, expand my horizons, that sort of thing. So, yeah. And yeah, there's a bit of a limitation because I'm using a local, like a free streaming app for a local channel called SBS On Demand. And movies come and go off the service, like just recently they did a Studio Ghibli thing, and each of those movies expires in like a week. But other movies stay on indefinitely, or some of them have expiry dates for like 3 months, 2 months. But basically, these expiry dates have kind of forced my hand into watching some of these movies that I've sort of decided to watch. So I have to get to the ones that are going to expire before I get to like the wider thing of it. So that's kind of how I got into this first movie. It, it was a choice in the sense that I was going to watch it, but it wasn't really my choice to watch it first. And it ended up being like a very, very intense, sort of confusing movie. It was a challenging movie to watch. So, yeah, that's just sort of how I fell into watching My Own Private Idaho. And it's like, I'm not entirely removed from movies like this. Very talky, they're going for more of an artistic, like, stylish bent at times. Um, I think detractors would say style over substance, but it was, it was just very, like, let me put it like this. Because the movie concerns, like, prostitution and there's a bit of sex in it and stuff, later in the movie, there are scenes where, like, the two main characters, Mike and Scott, are having sex. And what they do is, they just show, like, 8 still frames. But it's like, they're, like, holding the positions, you can, like, see them moving, but, like, they're meant to be still frames instead of, like, simulating sex. So that's sort of what I meant by, like, it's going for more style, sort of dealio. But I've kind of put the cart before the horse. So My Own Private Idaho, I didn't really know what it was about. Like, pretty much all that I knew about this movie is that it had Keanu Reeves in it. Actually, I've got some notes here. So yeah, sorry. I'll just quickly check these out. Yeah, basically, I knew Keanu Reeves was in it, and I knew it had queer themes. So I wasn't really expecting the narcolepsy angle of Mike. I didn't realize, it was going to be, yeah. I don't know, it just, obvious, I was like, I wouldn't say taken aback, but I was just like, I was watching it and I was like, I get what this is going for, but I'm not really super sure that this is for me. But the whole point of this, like, vlog thing and, like, watching movies and all that sort of thing is that I'm trying to challenge myself. I'm trying to watch movies that I wouldn't otherwise, like, normally watch. So I just ended up watching the whole thing. One thing that stuck out to me, and granted, it's very much one of those things where it's like, guy who's only seen Transformers watching his second movie Getting some big Transformers vibes from this. It's kind of like that with Nail and I, because you have the central pair where it's the titular with Nail and I in that movie, but then you also have Mike and Scott in My Own Private Idaho, and obviously they're not like a one to one. Like it's not like it's an American rip-off, nothing like that. Where it's like basically it's kind of like Scott is because with Nail and that main character in that movie, they're both kind of like fuck ups, but at the same time, with Nail is a lot more like misanthropic and sociopathic, and so that unnamed central character acts as a bit of a caretaker at times, at least to my recollection. I could be wrong. And what I noticed is that Scott in this movie, despite kind of I'll get into that. But he's basically the caretaker character. But at the same time, that would make Mike the Withnail archetype. But Mike has a good heart, which Withnail didn't really have. So they're just two very like complicated characters. And so I'm gonna have to. Actually, you know what? I won't spoil it. But basically, there's an interesting. Well, what am I trying to say? There's an interesting sort of counterbalance, like a counterpoint, where like the way the with nail and I ends, and the way that my own private Idaho ends, is like they're mirrors. It's like this is what would happen if this were to happen to these characters, but in this movie, this is kind of what it would look like if the opposite happened. So, again, like, considering that they're both like cult classic movies with like queer themes, it seems a bit of a cop out to like be like, oh, well, this reminded me of With Nail and I, but like, that was sort of on the forefront of my mind. Now, for the actual plot, because the plot's a little bit rambly, like, it has Mike out in Idaho, and he, like, has one of his narcolepsy attacks, and then it goes into Portland, and it goes into the prostitution, then he has a narcolepsy attack, and then they're going out to Idaho, and then they're going to the thing, and then they're going to Rome. So, it's a bit of a... It's... The way I put it is, like, it's a very naturalistic movie. Like, it goes from, like, point to point to point. But it's not like, we have to go to A so that we can go to B to pick up the thing so that we can do C. It's just, it's kind of like a road trip movie, you know? So, yeah, pretty, like, I'd say about 20 minutes into the movie, an older character named Bob is introduced. And I thought Bob was going to be the wrench in the works. Like, he's an older character who kind of mentored Scott, and I figure because like Scott and Mike are so close, he's either going to get jealous or he's just generally going to end up being like this big destructive force that ends up like harming or killing either of the characters, just acting as an antagonist. And without spoiling too much, he doesn't really turn out to be like that. There is a bit of antagonism, but I was actually surprised somewhat by what the movie did with him. And that sort of adds to the naturalistic tone, because, like, it's not like Baby Driver, for example, where, like, it's like, oh, Baby's like the good guy, and Kevin Spacey's like the bad guy, and then there's the love interest and all the it's not like that. It's, it really is just like pretty much a week in the life of these characters, and it's a very eventful week, but it's not really, my sort of preconceived notions were thrown out the window with what they did with Bob. I also really liked how, like, Shakespearean the dialogue was in these scenes with Bob, and I read later on that it's because his relationship with Scott was sort of taken from Henry VIII by Shakespeare. So that's kind of interesting. Let's see. I'll just quickly flick through my notes. Yep. With Nail on Eye. Mm-hmm. Let's see. That's something worth mentioning. Where me thinking that Bob was going to be an antagonistic force might have been coming from my like framing of I'm seeing this movie as like having a bit of a dialogue between itself and Withnail and I. And in Withnail and I, you have this character Monty, who's related to Withnail, who is an antagonistic force for the main character. So I think that might be one reason why I was coming at this from the angle of Bob was going to end up being this like antagonistic character. I found it kind of interesting after the movie ended that Scott basically lays his plan out right at the start of the movie. He's like, I'm going to get in good with my dad, I'm going to get my inheritance, and then I'm going to bring you guys up with me. But, you know, ultimately Scott comes from a place of money. You know, he comes from privilege. He's just slumming it with, like, the guys because it pisses off his dad, and I guess it's fun. So, I guess in the end, it's not super surprising what happens, but, you know, it's like he's already made his plans. Like, he's saying, like, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm gonna take my inheritance, I'm going to, like, kowtow to daddy's will, and get my money, and then he's saying, well, you, Bob, you'll be my wheelman, like, I'll hire you, like, I'm gonna bring you guys up with me. And, you know, it's like, the plan changes, but he's basically had this in mind the entire time. So, it's not super surprising when the turn does happen. It definitely leaves, like, a bad taste in my mouth, but, like, I guess you can sort of see it coming where you see Scott going into the club and Bob, like, walks in with him. So, it is what it is. But, in my opinion, like, it really shifts when he meets, I think her name's Carmela, I'll just call her the Italian woman. He meets this Italian woman, and earlier in the movie, Mike has this moment where he basically confesses his love to Scott. And Scott, like, kind of awkwardly turns him down, because, like, Scott's gay for pay, but he's, you know, ostensibly straight. So, so Scott knows that Mike loves him. And so this is the worst part of the movie, where, like, him and Camilla are, like, falling in love in front of Mike's face while he's just fucking sitting there and watching it happen. And it fucking sucks. Like, it's rough. And I think when he meets Camilla, that's where Scott's basically like, you know what? I am gonna get out of here. I'm not gonna come back. You know, I'm gonna, like, now that I'm in love with this woman, I'll take her back. I'll, like, become the big heir like they all want me to be. And, yeah, basically Mike gets fucked over. Because, there's a scene where Scott gives Mike, like, a bunch of their money. And he's like, dude, I'm going off with her. And, like, maybe our paths will cross again, who knows. But, during that scene where Mike confesses his love to Scott, Scott specifically says he only has sex with men for money. And I thought it was an interesting parallel because in this scene, Scott is giving Mike money, and it's in a scene where Scott is basically fucking Mike. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that was just a really rough part of the movie. Like, good rough, like, emotionally rough. It was not an easy watch. Like, that shit sucked. Like, oh, man. And then, I thought it was thematically appropriate that, like, at the end of the movie, Scott's in, like, this gilded heaven, like a gilded cage, where he's weighted on hand and foot. He'll never want for anything. Like, he's in heaven. And Mike and all the other hustlers and the like, they're in hell. They're like sleeping on the streets, uh, addicted to drugs, almost certainly going to die young, sort of deal. And so it's like Scott's living in a very restrictive, caged heaven, while Mike and all the rest are in hell, but they're free. So I thought it was good that at the end of the movie, Mike gets to torment Scott. Because if he's going to be in hell, he might as well be doing some of the he might as well be doing some of the punishing. And that brings us to the end of the movie where, I have in my notes, like, maybe the low hanging fruit that I could go for is like, like, is this purgatory? Is this Mike passing into the afterlife? And I guess one reason why I would sort of jump to that is because with Mike being played by River Phoenix died of drug overdose a few months after this movie came out. So it's kind of hard not to watch this movie without, like, just this feeling of Mike dying tragically young sort of hanging over the whole thing. But I think more than being like some lofty, like, metaphor, well, this lofty, like, theological sort of, the themes, more than that, I'm thinking it's more so just, it's a coda. It's like a final statement on the movie and what Mike's life is, which is that ultimately there are going to be people who take advantage of him, and they're going to, like, hurt him, they're going to steal his things, but there'll also be people who'll help him even when he's at his lowest. And it's not really an answer, it's just a statement of, like, life going on. But I think that in itself is, like, I think pretty appropriate considering just considering the tone of the movie and sort of the pace of it all. Oops. So I've got to stop recording because, like, my internal storage is running out. But yeah, those were my thoughts on the movie. So that's one movie down, 51 to go. I don't know if anyone's going to watch these. They're going to be pretty low quality, just me talking in my room. Probably not going to be edited or anything. So thank you for tuning in for my movie vlog / ramble. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. See ya.